The phase plant analog generator is a basic waveform oscillator designed to reproduce simple waveforms you might find in analog synth oscillators in the highest possible fidelity. You can choose between a sawtooth, square or pulse wave, triangle, or sine. The sine is the simplest, producing only its fundamental frequency and no overtones. Triangle gives more overtones, but still sounds quite mellow, while the square and sawtooth waves sound quite harsh, producing a lot of higher harmonics, both odd and even in the case of the saw wave, and for the square, only the odd-numbered multiples of the fundamental frequency. That makes both of these waves great candidates for so-called subtractive synthesis, where you start with a lot of frequency information and selectively subtract from it to sculpt a sound, for example with a low-pass filter. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. How about these controls? There's an amplitude or level control for the oscillator, then 3 different ways to affect the tuning of the oscillator, by semitones and cents, by a multiple of the fundamental frequency, or by a fixed Hertz offset. Why not just one pitch control? Well, although they each do the same thing, adjust the frequency, the different methods and scales are useful in different circumstances. Like if you're building an FM bell sound, you need to know that you're offsetting the operating waveform by a precise multiple or ratio of the carrier. You use the harmonic control. Or if you're building a chord stacky stab, you might want one oscillator always to be offset by a fixed musical value, so you use the semitones. Or perhaps you want the same tone no matter what note gets hit on the keyboard. You could set the harmonic to 0 and use shift to dial in an exact Hertz value. In any case, giving you extreme control in an elegant design that isn't cluttered or overwhelming is the aim. Finally, you can control the phase, where in its period the waveform starts playing, as well as the amount of randomness of that value. This doesn't make much difference to a single sound on its own, but when you start mixing several sounds together, phase can be a huge difference maker. And in addition, this is a fun parameter to modulate, to get some extreme warping effects, even out of simple waveforms. For example, let's add another analog oscillator below the output, so it's out of the audio signal flow, and by clicking on this colourful plus sign, we can take the signal from its output to modulate the phase of our audible waveform. Neat, huh? We'll come back to modulation in more detail later. On the right of our analog oscillator, we have the sync control, which mimics a popular feature of analog synths where a second detuned waveform is locked to the frequency of the first by having it start again whenever the first waveform completes a cycle. It's a quick and easy way to add some harmonic spice. There's also a pulse width control, which is grayed out except when the square or pulse wave is selected. We can use this to adjust the width of our pulse for a range of timbres and effects. And the last feature of the analog oscillator is unison, which turns a single waveform into many, playing together in unison. If you just add voices, you simply get a louder result without changing the timbre. But if you detune the additional voices slightly and spread them across the stereo field, you get a rich chorus effect, with different characteristics depending on the mode you choose from the menu. You can read more about the details of the different modes in the phase plant manual, link in the description. There are also different kinds of pitch stacks, scales, and chords to experiment with. The blend changes the focus from the original tone to the additional ones, and the fourth control here is different depending on the mode. So that's the analog generator. But as capable and varied as it is, that's far from the full story. Let's talk next about the noise generator.